Why do people who suppress their emotions face unexpected tragedies? Did you know that there is a specific kind of silence that screams louder than any noise? Beneath the composure lies a dangerous accumulation of unwept tears. This is a slow, invisible drowning. They are the ones who rarely raise their voice, the ones who listen more than they speak, the ones who appear steady, unshaken, almost untouchable in moments when others fall apart. When chaos erupts around them, they are the calm in the room, composed, thoughtful, reliable. People turn to them instinctively, believing they will know what to do. And often, they do. They absorb panic, organize confusion, hold the world together with quiet hands. Their presence is soothing, and their stillness feels like safety. But beneath that surface lies an ocean moving violently. No one sees it. That is the design. People like this learned early that the world rewards control. They were praised for being strong, admired for staying collected, and applauded for never burdening others. Over time, it became their identity. The one who doesn't break, the one who holds everything in, the one who survives silently. So they build a mask, elegant, polished, serene, a gentle smile, a voice that never trembles, eyes that never leak the truth. They become experts at hiding storm clouds behind sunlight, stitching themselves together so tightly that no seam ever shows. And everyone believes it. Friends say, "You're so strong." Family says, "You're different. Nothing ever shakes you." Strangers say, "I wish I had your control." But strength is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of permission to feel. Behind that composed exterior, there are moments when the weight of unspoken words presses against their ribs. When grief sits like stone in their lungs, when anger coils inside them like a burning wire, when loneliness echoes through every silent night. But instead of letting any of it rise, they swallow it whole, convincing themselves it's better this way, easier, safer. And the tragic part is this: no one thinks to ask how they are doing. Because if someone always looks fine, why would anyone suspect they are drowning? They are surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. They comfort everyone else, yet no one knows they need comfort. Their shoulders carry more than they admit even to themselves, because they believe that if they ever truly opened their mouth, everything inside would spill uncontrollably. So they choose silence. They choose control. They choose the mask. But masks are heavy, and the weight of pretending eventually demands a price. Emotional silence rarely begins in adulthood. Its roots stretch backward, deep into childhood, into rooms where feelings were too loud, too dangerous, or simply unwanted. For many, the lesson was simple and painfully clear. Emotion was not safe. Some grew up in homes where anger filled every corner, where shouting cracked through walls, where tension lived like a ghost that never slept. In those houses, staying quiet was survival. Speaking up meant triggering explosions. Crying meant weakness. Expressing fear or pain only added fuel to an already burning fire. So they learned to disappear inside themselves, to swallow every feeling before it had time to be seen. Others grew up in homes of silence, places where emotions were treated like shameful things, private, and forbidden. Where sadness was met with, "Stop exaggerating." Where fear was dismissed with, "Nothing is wrong." Where joy was tempered by, "Don't get ahead of yourself." In those homes, feelings were not dangerous. They were irrelevant. And irrelevance leaves a different kind of wound. Some were told directly, "Be strong, don't cry, toughen up, handle it yourself," a message repeated so often that it carved itself into their bones. Some watched caregivers fall apart under the weight of their own lives. Parents struggling with illness, financial collapse, or emotional instability. Children in those environments learn quickly that their own pain must be hidden to protect the adults they depend on. They become caretakers long before they understand themselves. Their needs dissolve quietly into the background, and sometimes no one said anything at all. Sometimes it was the absence, the emotional distance, the unreachable parent, the love that never quite arrived. When comfort never comes, a child learns not to ask. When no one notices their tears, they stop crying. They tell themselves stories like, "It's not important. I can handle it. No one needs to know." What begins as adaptation becomes identity. Years pass. They grow up. They leave the home where the lessons started, but the lessons never leave them. They become adults who apologize before expressing needs, who freeze when asked how they feel, who would rather break alone than show a crack in public. They build lives on top of old wounds that were never allowed to speak, and the world applauds them for it, not knowing that the strength everyone admires is built on the remains of a childhood where silence was the only way to survive. When emotions are buried, they do not disappear. The body keeps them alive. Scientifically, emotional suppression is not silence. It is redirection. The nervous system, unable to release tension through expression, stores it within muscles, organs, and neural pathways. What the mind refuses to feel, the body is forced to hold. Inside, the stress response never fully shuts off. The heart beats a little faster. Breathing becomes shallow. The shoulders stay tight, the jaw clenched, the stomach unsettled. The body waits, always braced for impact that never comes. Psychologists call this chronic emotional inhibition, a state where emotional energy is locked inside instead of being processed and released. Over time, the brain learns to numb and disconnect, turning emotion into pressure rather than motion. Instead of flowing, it stagnates. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, stays on high alert, scanning constantly for threat. The prefrontal cortex, the center of reasoning and decision-making, works overtime to maintain control, suppressing anything that feels risky or overwhelming. And in that constant internal battle, exhaustion takes root. This is why people who never express emotion often feel tired, even after rest. Why they struggle with headaches, chest tightness, digestive problems, or unexplained chronic pain. The body speaks the truth. The voice refuses to say. The research is clear. Long-term emotional suppression is linked to anxiety, depression, hypertension, weakened immunity, insomnia, panic disorders, and autoimmune conditions. Not because they are weak, but because no system can carry pressure forever without release. And yet, they continue to hold everything inside. Why? Because expression feels dangerous. Because vulnerability feels like exposure, because somewhere deep inside, there is a fear. If I start, I won't be able to stop. If I show the truth, no one will stay. If I break, I won't survive it. So they disconnect from themselves to survive. They cut off their own feelings, the way a body might numb a wounded limb, not out of choice, but out of necessity. Emotional shutdown becomes a shield, a way to keep functioning in a world that once punished their sensitivity. On the outside, they appear calm. Inside, the body is screaming quietly. Every unspoken word becomes tension. Every swallowed tear becomes weight. Every ignored feeling becomes a silent storm waiting for release. And whether they realize it or not, the cost is growing. There comes a moment when silence turns against the one who created it. On the outside, life continues as usual. Work, responsibilities, conversations, laughter placed carefully like ornaments to decorate a controlled existence. But internally, a quiet war begins. A war between the part that longs to be understood and the part terrified of being seen. It is an invisible conflict fought in the space between the heart and the mind. One part whispers, "You are tired of holding this alone." You want someone to ask, to notice, to stay. You want to breathe without bracing for collapse. But another voice responds sharply, "Don't be weak. Don't expose too much. No one needs to know what you feel." And so, they remain trapped between longing and fear, craving connection yet pushing it away, desperate to speak, yet terrified of hearing their own truth out loud. They sit in conversations surrounded by people, but feel a hollow distance. They try to trust, but something pulls them back, warning them that intimacy is danger disguised as warmth. They want to lean on someone, yet the thought of being held feels unbearable, as if the moment arms wrap around them, everything they buried would burst through the surface. This inner conflict takes many shapes. Sometimes it is irritability, frustration triggered by the smallest things, not because of the moment, but because of everything underneath it. Sometimes it is numbness, a quiet flatness where emotions disappear entirely, leaving only emptiness. Sometimes it is restlessness, the inability to be still, constantly moving, constantly working, constantly distracting, terrified of what silence might reveal. And sometimes it is loneliness so sharp it feels physical, a loneliness not caused by the absence of others, but by the absence of self. They watch others laugh freely, cry openly, fall apart, and be held together by the people around them. And they wonder what it must feel like to be that safe, to not carry every emotion like a secret, to not live life behind glass. But old conditioning is powerful. Vulnerability is a door rusted shut by years of self-protection. Even when they want to open it, the fear is stronger. The idea of letting someone close feels like stepping out onto thin ice. One wrong move and everything shatters. So they continue the battle silently, smiling externally, bleeding internally, wanting connection, terrified of it. And every day, the distance between who they are and who they pretend to be grows wider until the weight becomes too heavy to ignore. Pressure always demands release. Even the strongest walls crack when the weight behind them becomes unbearable. For those who bottle up their emotions, the breaking point rarely arrives loudly. It does not announce itself with shouts or dramatic scenes. It comes quietly, disguised as exhaustion, as numbness, as a sudden inability to keep pretending. One day, the mask simply stops fitting. It might happen in an ordinary moment, standing in the shower, sitting in a parked car, lying awake in the dark, when the world finally becomes silent enough to hear the truth. It may come on the night when they can no longer outrun their own thoughts, when the body trembles without reason, when tears arrive uninvited after years of holding them back. Or it may arrive in a storm, an explosion of emotion so intense it frightens even them. A burst of anger that feels foreign. A wave of panic that steals breath. A collapse into sobs so deep it feels like drowning. The body finally does what the voice never allowed. It forces release. And sometimes, the breaking point is not dramatic at all. Sometimes, it is silence. A silence so heavy, it suffocates. A silence where nothing matters anymore. A silence that feels like disappearing from your own life. For some, it looks like burnout, the complete shutdown of energy, motivation, capacity. For others, it looks like withdrawal, cutting off from relationships, avoiding calls, losing interest in everything once loved. For many, it is the sudden realization that they can no longer feel anything at all. It is terrifying, because the breaking point reveals the truth they spent years covering, that strength without softness becomes self-destruction. That control without release becomes collapse. That silence is not peace, it is imprisonment. In that moment, they are confronted with the reality they have tried to avoid. They cannot carry this alone anymore. But here lies the paradox. The breaking point is both an ending and a beginning. It is the moment when everything falls apart, but also the moment when something new can finally be built. Pain forces honesty. Collapse forces change. The breaking point forces the question they have avoided all their life. What would happen if I finally let myself feel? And for the first time, the possibility of opening up, once unimaginable, begins to flicker like a small, fragile light in the dark. Healing does not arrive all at once. It comes quietly, gently, almost shyly, like morning light slipping through a window after a long night. For someone who has spent a lifetime swallowing emotions, learning to feel again is not a leap. It is a slow return, a hesitant rebuilding, a careful unlearning of everything they once believed was necessary for survival. It begins with small moments. A pause long enough to notice the tightness in the chest. A breath deep enough to feel the ribs expand. A quiet acknowledgement, something hurts here. At first, it feels wrong, unsafe, unfamiliar, like walking barefoot across ground that once burned. The instinct to retreat is strong. The impulse to shut down arrives instantly. Years of self-protection do not disappear because the mind suddenly understands the cost of repression. Healing starts with permission. Permission to name feelings without apologizing. Permission to say, I don't know how to talk about this yet. Permission to be unsure, imperfect, unfinished. Sometimes it begins in therapy. Sometimes in conversation with someone who listens without trying to fix. Sometimes alone in a journal. Words spilling onto paper for the first time without censorship. The first tears, after years of silence, feel both terrifying and extraordinary. A cracking open. A release so ancient, it feels like the body has been waiting forever for the moment to arrive. There is no sudden clarity, no fireworks of transformation, just softness, and softness is enough. Slowly, they begin to notice things they once ignored, the tightness in their shoulders after a difficult day, the subtle ache behind forced laughter, the trembling beneath the surface when someone asks, "Are you okay?" They begin recognizing emotions not as threats, but as signals. Messengers carrying truths that were never dangerous, only desperate to be heard. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the person who is buried beneath survival. There are setbacks, days when silence feels easier, moments when vulnerability shakes the ground beneath their feet. But even then, something has shifted. They can no longer pretend they are untouched. They have tasted honesty, and honesty has changed them. For the first time, they allow themselves to be held, not because they are weak, but because they are human. And in that gentle surrender, the weight they carried alone begins to lighten. The journey is slow, but every small step says the same quiet truth. You were never meant to feel everything alone. At the end of every long winter, the ground begins to soften. Frozen earth loosens, ice melts. What was buried slowly rises. When someone who has lived a lifetime behind emotional walls finally allows themselves to speak, it is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is not the cinematic confession people imagine. More often, it is a quiet release. A single sentence spoken with trembling hands. A breath that feels like breaking open. Sometimes it sounds like, "I'm tired." Sometimes like, "I don't know how to keep doing this." Or simply, "I need help." To others, these words may seem small. To the one speaking them, they are enormous. A rebellion against years of silence. A re-entry into the world of the living. Because when silence finally speaks, what emerges is not weakness, but truth. Not collapse, but courage. Not fragility, but freedom. For the first time, they feel the relief of being seen, the safety of someone staying when they share what hurts, the warmth of a connection that does not demand perfection, control, or a polished mask. And slowly, the world begins to change shape. Conversations deepen. Relationships become softer. Walls that once protected now feel unnecessary. They begin to understand that vulnerability is not exposure. It is belonging. That letting someone close does not guarantee pain. It makes healing possible. That tears are not a sign of breaking. They are the body finally exhaling. In this new space, there is room for every part of them. The strong and the fearful. The composed and the trembling. the calm surface and the ocean beneath. They discover that strength was never the absence of emotion. Strength was surviving without support. Courage is learning to stop. And eventually, they reach a moment they once believed impossible. The moment when they can speak without shaking, cry without shame, ask without fear. The moment when silence becomes voice, and voice becomes connection. There is no dramatic ending, only peace. A quiet peace, like standing in gentle rain after years of drought. A peace that feels like finally breathing fully, without the weight of unspoken storms. The tragedy was never that they felt too much. The tragedy was that they believed they had to feel it alone. And when silence finally speaks, the world listens, and something beautiful begins. The return to themselves.